Welcome, members of the public, colleagues and officers to our Cabinet meeting this evening. I'll be chairing the meeting, and in order to manage our business as efficiently as possible, I will invite people to speak one at a time to ensure that their contributions are properly heard. Therefore, please do not speak unless invited to do so. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. On hearing the fire alarm, please leave the building immediately using the nearest available exits. Do not, under any circumstances, use the lift. The assembly point is in the area in the Civic Office car park next to the roundabout. You should not attempt to re-enter the building until it is known to be safe to do so. Item 1, communications and apologies. None have been received. Agenda item 2, presentation of petitions. There have been no petitions received. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interests to declare? Councillor Myers.
Need to declare a other pecuniary interest as a council-appointed director of Hertsmere Film Studios due to the Part 2 thing coming up later on.
Thank you. My understanding is that that report relates to a council responsibility as the landlord, so there's no need for members to be concerned about needing to leave the room. Harvey, can you advise us?
Yes, it is the case that the what is proposed in the report and the cost of that proposal, if it's supported by members, is in fact a council and not a responsibility for Hertsmere Film Studios. So, in my view, on this occasion, that interest does not require the member to leave the meeting.
Okay, so interest is noted, but you'll be able to fully participate in the discussion, and I will declare on the same basis. Item number 4, if there are no other interest to declare, speeches by non-cabinet members. Welcome Councillor Clapper, who has joined us this evening. Non-cabinet members are reminded that they may speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any item on the agenda, with a maximum of 5 members per item, no more than 2 from any one group. It doesn't look like we will come close to approaching that threshold this evening. Agenda item 5, minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any comments on accuracy? No. If not, I will ask if members are happy to agree for me to sign those minutes of our meeting held on 6th of November 2024. Thank you. I will sign them at the conclusion of this meeting to save time. Item 6 is recommendations from scrutiny committees. There are no recommendations that the Cabinet have received from scrutiny committees this evening. Agenda item 7 is key decisions. To remind members, those are decisions that result in expenditure or savings of over £100,000 revenue or capital in any one year, or decisions which have a significant impact on people living or working in 2 or more wards, or will result in expenditure or savings of £100,000 revenue or capital in any one year, and have a significant impact on people living or working in more than 2 wards. The only key decisions that we have on the agenda tonight will be in the closed Part 2 session of the meeting, on the basis that they are commercially sensitive. Is that correct, Harvey?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I have just realised I've been given 2 slightly different versions of a script. Okay, we'll move straight on to agenda item 8, non-key decisions. The first of which, item 8.1, is on safeguarding in Hertsmere, Action Plan 2024. I shall ask Councillor Chalice, our Cabinet Member for Resources and Digital Transformation, to introduce this item, and then I shall ask for any further comments from Hilary Shade, our Head of Partnerships, Community Engagement and Housing.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. So this report is brought to the Cabinet to secure adjustment of the Safeguarding Action Plan for Hertsmere following the Hertfordshire Safeguarding Adult Self-Assessment that was carried out back in June of this year. The report also seeks approval for a temporary resource to take forward this action plan and to embed safeguarding arrangements across the council. Adult safeguarding was set out for the first time in law in the Care Act of 2014. This reflected that safeguarding adults was everyone's business and that all organisations have an overarching responsibility to safeguard adults from abuse or neglect. The Hertfordshire Safeguarding Adults Board self-assessment was undertaken back in June, and it identified some areas for improvement in the safeguarding arrangements across the council. The purpose of the self-assessment tool is to assist organisations to assess, monitor and improve their safeguarding adults arrangements. The action plan at Appendix A in the report has been created using the feedback from the Chair of Safeguarding Adults Board following the self-assessment. The actions within this plan will ensure the Council has the appropriate safeguarding practices, policies and procedures in place. And previously, safeguarding was carried out as part of the Human Resources Advisor role, but this is no longer provided for in the current Human Resources establishment. Currently, there are no specific resources for safeguarding in the Council, and it's proposed that going forward, safeguarding is led by the Community Safety Team in the Partnerships and Community Engagement Service. However, additional short-term resource is required to take forward this action plan and embed safeguarding arrangements and practices across the organisation. The financial implications of this is set out in the report. So the recommendation is that the Cabinet endorse the safeguarding action plan, and approval is given for recruitment of an 18-month fixed-term post within the Partnerships for Community Engagement to support delivery of the action plan and embed safeguarding arrangements across the organisation. It's proposed that half of the costs of this post, around 27,000, will be met from the Human Resources Revenue Budget, with the balance being met from the contingency budget as set out in paragraphs 7.1. Thank you. And, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Chalice. Hilary, did you want to add anything at this stage?
Sorry, yeah. The only thing that I would add is that once we get this resource in place, we will undertake a similar process for safeguarding of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clapper.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for that introduction. I think it's really helpful. It seems like a really vital role, so obviously very supportive. I'm wondering, why has this not gone through personnel as it is a new job role? I understand where the idea stemmed from, and it'd be good to have some reassurance that up until now, safeguarding has been managed adequately, if you're satisfied with that. Is there going to be a job description? And if so, can it be shared? And obviously recommendations that, as it's going to be one person specifically looking after safeguarding, that they should have enough experience, bearing in mind they're going to be doing the job solo. And the last question is, you said that half the funding is coming from contingency. At the last discussion, I think our contingency was around 300,000. It'd be very useful to get an update on what our contingency is at this moment. Thank you very much.
Before I ask Councillor Chalice to come back on the sort of substantive points, Matthew, are you able to give us a ballpark figure on contingency situation?
Yeah, we have a budget for contingency of 300,000, and that's what we had in the budget this year. We've utilised quite a bit of that this year. I believe there's about 60k left in this year, but obviously the contingency budget will continue again afresh next year.
Thank you. And presumably the proposal is that the 27.5k coming from contingency would come from this year's contingency pots. So we would start with a sort of fresh amount again with no calls on it. Councillor Chalice, do you want to come back on that before I move to Cabinet comments?
Thank you. So I'll probably be able to answer some of these, and then I might ask Hilary to continue. So in terms of why it's come to Cabinet, I think it's looking at the overall role and also the wider review that was conducted. It's been something that's really important to bring to this stage, but then I'm sure it will also have to go before personnel, before the final finishing touches can be put on it. In terms of jobs description, I'm sure that will, Hilary, I'm just going to turn to you, that will all be put together and go through personnel, and adequate checks will be done to ensure that the person employed in this role will be suitable for it. And I think also this forms part of a bigger scope of issues around making sure that councillors as well have safeguarding training. So there's a bigger picture at play here that will progress. Now, if I may turn to Hilary, Sorry,
before Hilary comes in, Harvey Patterson is just going to add.
Can I just say one of the advantages of this report is that when it goes to Personnel Committee and when Personnel Committee look at the job description and agree that that post should be added to our establishment, it will not have to come back to the Cabinet, which it would ordinarily have to do because this report identifies the budget. You're right, it is the other way around that we'd normally do it. It'd normally be Personnel and then Cabinet. But it was important to bring the safeguarding plan here, and the funding is here, but Personnel will make the decision on the job description, and then we will recruit it using our normal recruitment procedures without having to come back here, meaning we can go to market for that role straight away.
Hilary.
Yeah, the job description is currently sitting on my desk upstairs, working on it as we speak. The whole purpose of getting this fixed term resource is to really drive forward the improvements. So we would expect somebody that's particularly experienced, will be able to review all of our processes, but safeguarding won't be only fixed with one role, because what we will do is we will look to have a network of community safeguarding champions within each of the different departments, so that, and then that this post will report to the community safety manager, who has a much wider role in terms of safeguarding, but also things like the prevent duty and all of those other things. So it won't really be a completely standalone role on their own. There will be wider resources within the partnerships team as well, but there will be, we're looking to embed community champions across the whole organisation.
Thank you. Before I bring Cabinet members in, I think I'll also add that I think I felt it was imperative that this report came to Cabinet at the earliest possible opportunity, because the work undertaken in the action plan effectively highlighted the fact that, you know, as an administration, I think we inherited a situation in which the overall ability to deliver on safeguarding concerns, to put the appropriate safeguards in place, was, let's say, a severe deficit. And we had this astonishing situation that we didn't have a scenario in which any elected cabinet member or elected member in that regard had responsibility for safeguarding, which in this day and age, when took over, didn't even contemplate that might be the case until it was pointed out. So I think I'm really not trying to make a political point here. I think there was a deficit. We needed to address the deficit as swiftly as possible. Councillor Chalice has kindly stepped up and taken the safeguarding role into her cabinet portfolio. So there is now that elected member oversight, and an action plan that tonight will be signed off by Cabinet means the earliest possible stage we have started to plug the gap, and the staff appointment piece in many ways is the detail that will follow afterwards. Councillor Gray, I saw you first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I just wanted to echo some of those points, actually, because I think we're moving away from having a named person and a single point of failure. What I see this role is embedding safeguarding culture throughout the entire organisation, from officers to members to anybody who has a touch point with this council. And it's about time we stood up and took it seriously, and we are doing. So this will enable that kind of culture of safeguarding to actually flow through everybody. So we all have responsibility for it. This particular role is going to be the person that is recruited to this role is going to drive that culture change forward within the council. Thank you.
Any other comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, I'd just say, particularly with my housing hat on, that, you know, people, are at risk of harm, of exploitation, that this is an important procedure. And, you know, we need to have measures in place to make sure people don't just slip through the net. So, you know, we have to be aware of where the responsibility lies and what people need to do to make sure it's identified and properly dealt with.
Thank you. Any other comments from Cabinet members? No, so I'd like to ask members of the Cabinet to endorse the action plan that's set out in Appendix A in front of us, to approve the budget of £54,250, split between the HR Revenue Fund and the Contingency Fund as set out in Recommendation 1.2, and the recruitment to that 18-month fixed-term post. Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Agenda item 8.2, the Hertsmere Vision Performance Report for Q2, which will be presented by Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report in front of you recommends to Cabinet to review and note the quarterly performance indicator report for Q2 for 24-25. The Cabinet Performance Panel met in November and has fully reviewed the performance report as attached in Appendix A, which captures the high-level performance information from across the organisation. It provides a progress against the corporate plan over the last quarter, setting out the narrative summaries of achievements along with performance information from the key performance indicators set against each priority from the vision. The main body of the report contains further information on the two indicators which have fallen into the red range during this period. They are the percentage of council tax collected and the percentage of non-domestic rates collected. It's worth noting that in Q1, when we saw this trend of not hitting the target as such, we did a deep dive with Matthew Bunyan and the team who came in to present and kind of give us a kind of update on where we were. And that's the way we're driving this forward now. Whenever we see things that don't look quite right, we try to act as quick as possible to get an understanding and see if there's any way we can support. I'm a little disappointed that we're still kind of not hitting target on those particular two. Councillor Shannon might have a few words to say on that after I finish my report. The performance panel also received a comprehensive presentation from Claire Noble, the acting head of HR, because that, again, in Q1, we were quite reading the kind of outturn of total employee turnover. It was a figure that we weren't happy with, and we wanted to get a better understanding of it. Claire has presented to the panel a really informative plan around recruitment and retention that focus on fundamental change within in the council, focusing on a change of culture, which we hope will support retention and recruitment challenges that the council are facing. I think that is making its way through personnel as we speak, or it actually could have gone to personnel already, but it certainly was a detailed piece of work, and I think Claire should be congratulated on that. She's really grabbed it by the nettle and is looking into how we change the culture and hopefully improve that retention and recruitment piece. That's all I have on it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clapper, do you...
Thank you very much for that introduction, and you're obviously aware of where the reds are, so I won't go into those. But just a very quick one from me. You mentioned as one of the achievements in Q2, 24-25, the St John's and Orchard Close as an achievement. I was just wondering, is the social housing on that site occupied now?
I'll probably throw it to you, actually, as head of asset management. Do you know if it's in place or not?
Steve or Hilary, I don't know if this is housing or asset management. I presume it would be housing now, wouldn't it? Hilary, can you help us?
Both. But my understanding is that you can help. My understanding is that we're having handover the site on the 16th of December, and we've already got a number of residents lined up to occupy those properties. But Harvey will probably be able to answer that.
No, just to say we know that transfer to HLL, who are able, unlike the council, to hold these tenures, is planned for that date. And we know that we're already in a position where as soon as they are in the possession of HLL, they will be able to fill those voids.
Yeah, I've been really clear with the team that the moment the transfer happens, I don't expect to have a single empty property on HLL's books that can be used to house a family in need, because that's exactly what they're for, and we need to make sure that we have our act together in order to make that transition absolutely seamless. They obviously can't be occupied until the legal transfer has taken place, but the moment it has, we need to have those families lined up and in. Comments or questions from Cabinet members? Councillor Shenton.
Just to pick up on Councillor Gray's point, we have been scrutinising, I have been speaking to the head of finance regularly about the red rag status for council tax collected. A lot of that is due to the fact that arrears collected are linked to previous years rather than the current year, so the picture always looks worse than it actually is. But as the note says, the service is confident that we will get up to the target in the near future. Thank you.
And if I can just ask a question on the NNDR business rate target hitting the red, is my understanding right that this is primarily due to a kind of quirk in terms of the timeline between us billing and ability to actually collect, or a lag between us billing and the rates becoming due?
Okay, thanks. I mean, the business rates one does look very disappointing, and we are disappointed by that at the moment. Although it doesn't take a lot for the target to, the actual against target to drop significantly. I think, as the text says in the report, there was a new rating bill. So when the VOA bring a new property into rating, we issue the bills. If that happens to be near the end of the quarter, there's not actually the ability for that property to pay that by the end of the quarter. And we are reporting at a point in time. So that's what we're required to do. Actually, what we're more focused on is, are we going to achieve our overall collection rate as it affects our budget, and that we are confident for. And I think also there was a couple of large bills that came in on the 1st and 2nd of October, which, had they come in a couple of days earlier, it would have made that position look a little bit better.
Councillor Gray.
I just want to say though, but I want to thank Matthew and the team for actually coming in and giving up an evening to explain that to us in detail. And actually, I think if we can do that with any of the issues that we have, or anything that are falling into amber or red, we get ahead of the problem much quicker, and actually can work together to make sure we fully understand, which is, as you did in quarter one. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we can all have the confidence that you will be on this with your panel and keep a very clear watching brief on both of those items, but perhaps particularly that one where we'd hope to see an improvement by the time next report to Cabinet. And if there's nothing else on that item, we'll move to agenda item 8.3, the sale of freehold property to Boreham Wood Islamic Society, which comes under my remit as an asset management item. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Brother Amir, a very esteemed and valued partner of this council, not just in terms of the work that he undertakes to deliver provision for the growing Islamic community in Boreham Wood, and in many cases beyond, but also to the much wider contribution that he makes to the very rich tapestry of faith-based organisations and activity in the borough, something for which he was recognised last year by the mayor with one of the borough's civic awards. As members will be aware, the reason that this report's in front of us today is that the Boreham Wood Islamic Society was initially accommodated with the support of the council in premises along the Leeming Aycliffe Road area of Boreham Wood, premises which they more than amply filled and grew out of in a very short space of time. And we worked both through our asset management team, through the partnerships team, and through the planning committee to effectively reaccommodate them in the old, everybody used to call it a scout's hut, but apparently it's officially a guide's hut. It was known as a scout's hut for since I don't know when, so I'm not quite sure when that change happened, but everybody knows the property that we're talking about on the edge of Maxwell Park in Boreham Wood's Maxwell Road. The leadership of the society approached us again earlier this year, sort of to set out their need and quite rightful desire to secure what would effectively be both permanent premises, but larger premises to accommodate the increase in size of the Muslim population across the borough. And the idea being that this would be multi-use premises to be used as a mosque, a prayer hall, and a wider community facility, part of which would be available for wider community use for all different communities and residents groups across the borough. As the report outlines, having looked at a number of different options, we feel the most effective way to achieve this will be by selling the freehold of that existing guide hut property on Maxwell Road to the Islamic Society in order to be redeveloped along those lines. As the report indicates, there will be a restrictive covenant placed upon the title so that if the Islamic Society wants to sell the property in the future, the council will have the first right of refusal, and there will be a title restriction, which will mean that the sole use of this property will be for religious or community purposes. So there's no chance of it being sort of flipped into housing or such like. I think the rest of the report is self-explanatory. As this is a sale of an asset, constitutionally this is something which sits with the cabinet as our decision. Due process has been followed. Professional external evaluations have been obtained. We're confident that the outlined deal effectively meets all of our legal and best value obligations, whilst at the same time recognising the significant community benefits that this new building will bring to the borough. In various meetings with the Islamic Society, they also clearly understand the strategic significance of this site in terms of the planned regeneration of Bournemouth High Street, and have already been working very closely and directly with the architects looking at the master plan for that area. And I am very confident that what ends up there will not just be commensurate and appropriate within the broader vision we have for that area. It'll actually be a really stunning centrepiece of it that the entire town and borough will be able to be proud of. So what I need to ask members to do before I ask for comments from non-members of the Cabinet is I need to point out that because elements of this proposed sale are commercially sensitive, there is a confidential appendix to this report that includes specific figures, valuation details, and so on. I need members to confirm that they are happy at this stage that we will enter part 2 at the end of the meeting in order to discuss the confidential part of the report. And what we will be discussing and voting on in a moment will simply be the items published in the part 1 content of this report. So are members happy that we enter part 2 at the end of the meeting to discuss the confidential appendix, and that the final vote on this item will be taken after the exclusion of the public in part 2? Okay, that's agreed. Councillor Clapper.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, a comment and then a couple of questions. Firstly, I mean, in terms of due process, should this report, again, not have, and it's a very brief report, I have to say, it's lacking in detail. I know you said that there's a part 2, but I think it's a very short report for an asset like this. But should this not have gone through the asset management panel is one thing I wanted to know. But 2 questions from me, really. Firstly, if we're looking at our long-term revenue stream, should we be looking at disposal of this site? Would it not be more prudent to retain the site, keep renting it, and have the revenue stream coming in, which I would have thought would be more advantageous to the council? But more specifically, when we look at the actual market value, you're looking at selling the freehold at a 40% reduction of market rate, which I understand, but then as I understand it, the council will have first refusal to then repurchase the property if the property comes back on the market. So if that's the case, should we not have the first refusal with a 40% of what the current market value is at that stage offered back to us, effectively a reverse ratchet scheme? Because in this we have a fiduciary duty to give best value to our taxpayer. And in both scenarios, firstly, disposing of the site, selling off an asset like this when we could be getting a steady stream of revenue in on an ongoing basis, or selling it at a reduced value and then not having the same opportunity to get the reduction that we are offering to them back to us. I think both of those need to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clapper. I'll bring Harvey Patterson in a moment, but I, further to an email I received earlier today from Councillor Cohen, suspected that some of these questions might be raised. So I am in a position to deal with most of the points that you've raised. Firstly, in terms of process, this is the sale of an asset, which, as I said before, is something that constitutionally sits with the Cabinet. It doesn't require the Asset Management Panel to consider it. It doesn't require the consent of local ward councillors. But the reality is that at the previous meeting of the Asset Management Panel, when the nascent asset management strategy was discussed, it was one of the 52 imperatives that were presented at that meeting very clearly was to work with the Boreham Wood Islamic Society to seek to create a scenario in which they had a permanent home that also functioned as a community resource. That very clearly was included, and part of the reason that I included it is because it is a pledge that our party made in our election manifesto, and I was always very clear from the moment I assumed this role that it would be something that we would do, which was why it was included in that original document. Secondly, I think in general terms, when it comes to our financial requirements, you're obviously absolutely correct that we always tend to prefer revenue receipts to capital receipts. However, currently the situation that we're in is, for reasons that people are well aware of, our capital receipts reserve is very low indeed. And it's also the case that part of the reason it's low is because we have been stung with, shall I say, the high costs associated with repairing and refurbishing various council-owned assets. I don't know when it was the last time that you went into the Scouts Hut again, the Guides Hut, but clearly there is a risk of us once again being in a situation where we are lumbered as an authority with significant landlord repair and refurbishment costs on a structure that frankly is not worth repairing or refurbishing. So I think in this instance it's right to take the opportunity to sell, as we have done with the property that we discussed recently on Bushy High Street, for exactly the same set of reasons. In terms of discounting the sale, we're entirely within our rights as an authority to discount the sale if the underlease is designated as it is for community, social or religious purposes. And as I already mentioned, there'll be a restrictive covenant in place ensuring that that remains the case. And should the Islamic Society decide to sell the property for any other purpose or any other set of use in the future, there'll be a 50% overage clause on the uplift of the uplift from the current sales price. So I think that sort of covers that item. I'd also add that before we went out to Brazier Firth, we undertook our own internal valuation based on the current state of the building and the current rental yield, which was actually significantly lower. It was some in the region of £250,000. The independent valuation from Brazier Firth actually is based on best value for current use with vacant possession, and then I think adding sort of an opportunity or hope value in terms of potential planning permission. It's probably important that I say that nothing that's decided here at Cabinet today can prejudice or predetermine any future planning application. Harvey, do you want to add to that?
Well, thank you, Leader, because that's very comprehensive. So, in fact, I'll really only be reinforcing points that you made, but I do think they need to be made very clearly. First of all, it's important to know the Council is going to put a restrictive covenant restricting the use of the site to the religious and community use that the Leader has outlined. And if that's the case, and I'm referring only to things that are in the open part of the report, if you look at 4.1 of the report, with that restriction, its market value is £350,000. And the recommendation in 1.1 is to sell it to the Islamic Society for £350,000. So the truth is, on the current restrictions, that is its market value. It's only when you take into account hope value, its potential future use, which would require the Council to agree to that restriction to be removed, that it would have a higher value, and where you have a subsidy. So when we looked at this as officers, we did consider that on its current use, it could equally be argued that it's a sale at market value, but nonetheless, there was a hope value, and we weren't going to hide that, and therefore it'd be better to refer to the power that we have for these kind of uses to sell at an undervalue. So clearly, what is proposed on any measure falls within our legal power as a council and doesn't compromise the duty we have in Section 123 of the Local Government Act 72 to obtain best possible value on our disposal transactions. So we're happy with that restriction, that the price we're selling it for is in fact not a subsidy. The second point is what happens next if something else wants to happen. One, the restrictive covenant will require the council's consent for that to happen. Two, we will have a right. There's going to be two choices here, and we need to be clear about that. There is going to be what lawyers call a right of preemption. That's the buyback clause. That buyback clause will not be at its hope value. That buyback clause will be at its current use value. So there is no question of the council having to pay a higher value if we exercise a right of preemption. And that's only going to arise if the Islamic Society want to use it for something other than the uses that it's being purchased for. Second, it may be the case that at that time the council does not want that asset back. That will be a decision the council will take at that time. But if it doesn't want to do that, and there is a move then to a higher value use such as housing, we will have an overage clause in which in the conventional way, and this is market typical, the council will be in a position where if that happens, the difference between its current use value and its value as a housing site at that time, that value will be shared with the council. We will have 50% of that overage, which is the standard position that is commercially normal. And it recognises there has to be something in it for the owner as well, for them to promote that. But the council is going to secure value that way and effectively recover the subsidy through that process. So the point is that it gives the council a choice should that happen. We don't anticipate that it will. The restriction is in place to make sure that that doesn't happen, but if it happens, the council will have choices between buying back or cashing in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, I saw first.
Thank you, Chair. A more refreshing change this new administration is, isn't it? Well, I agree with Councillor Clapper. It's important we always keep one eye on nourishing the council's wallet. I think it's also imperative we keep one eye on nourishing the council's heart and the heart of our residents. So I look forward, hopefully in the very near future, to welcome Hertsmere and the Borough Islamic Society to their new home. And I'm really keen to see what progress will be made and how you become a key player in driving the regeneration of Broadwood forward. Thank you.
Councillor Richards.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the, especially with Harvey's reinforcement of the view that the covenant is perfectly acceptable. The other thing I wanted to point out and build on that is, so there is a value of the asset in its own right, but then there's also, we were talking in a previous meeting about social value, and this I think would be an important part of that for the borough. So the ability for a community, a very important part of the community, to come together, and you know, that is harder to put in terms of quantitative value, but social value is important here.
Thank you. Councillor Oakley, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. I was party to the discussions with Brother Amir over what kind of needed to happen, the fact that they had outgrown these premises, and that frankly, and it is one of those really old-fashioned Girl Guide hut, and it really is a Girl Guide hut, not a Scout hut. And we discussed potential other sites in the area, but there really weren't anything, and their basic preference was for staying where they were and being able to redevelop that site. Now, once that kind of premise had been accepted, then I think this was absolutely the way forward. I'm absolutely comfortable with the valuation. I'm comfortable with the covenant that indeed, along with the overage, will protect the council, and I really can't wait until I see this development on the ground, and I'm wishing the society and the broader community who are going to benefit from this scheme, I can't wait to see it.
Thank you. Look, I have to say, I was quite perturbed when I got the email earlier today from the opposition planning spokesperson, because, you know, obviously starts by saying, well, I'm not really opposed to a new faith facility, but then it goes on to tell us that by delivering this, we're abrogating our responsibilities, and we should be ensuring that this stays within council ownership, and we need to open up the discussion to all local councillors, all the local residents groups. We need to offer it to every other community group in the area in case somebody else wants to purchase it. And I have to ask myself the question that why would we apply a different set of rules to a mosque to that which we applied when making a very similar sale on 39 Bushy High Street? I think the way Councillor Clapper has approached this evening is absolutely right and proper, and she has ensured that this decision is scrutinised on financial and probity grounds. But I think that I also recognise, coming from other sources, political opposition to the principle of a mosque when I see it. And I find that shocking because, you know, I want to see a future in which visitors from Boreham Wood get out of the train at Elstree Station, walk down the high street, they go past the Jewish Life Centre at the new NatWest building, the old NatWest building that we've also facilitated. They go past All Saints Church with pride of place at the centre of our high street as the most historic faith-based place of worship in the area. They continue past BBC Elstree Film Studios, reflecting the cultural heritage of the town. They then, en route to modern Sky Studio Complex, go past a brand spanking new mosque and community centre taking pride of place, because that to me is what placemaking is all about. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to achieve in this area. And yes, we've rightly gone into an awful lot of financial and legal details this evening, but none of that should detract from the primary reason that we are intending on making this possible. It's about making this borough and this town into the type of place that we want to see, and that's why I'm really proud to be recommending this to Cabinet for approval this evening. I know that because of the technicalities, we have to take the final vote as part of our closed Part 2 item, but I think it's right and appropriate that I ask Cabinet for an indicative sense of their support, and I do see people nodding their heads, and obviously the formal decision will be taken very shortly. I hope that hasn't broken any rules. I don't believe it has. Agenda item 9, any other business that the chair considers urgent? There is none. Agenda item 10, date of the next meeting. The next meeting of the Cabinet is scheduled for 6 p.m. on the 15th of January 2025 already. And just before we move to exclusion of the public, take this opportunity to wish everybody present here today, everybody that's watching us on the webcast, a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, season's greetings, and look forward to continuing decision-making in this same vein during the course of 2025. Agenda item 11 is exclusion of the public. Members, please can you confirm that you're happy to go into closed session for the part 2 items on the agenda under section 100A, clause 4, the Local Government Act 1972? Agreed. We'll just pause.